Welcome to another Build Your Stash video. Today we are going to go vintage. We are going to do sentiments on vintage papers. We are going to make some collage shapes on vintage papers, and it's all going to start with a cup of tea. Hi everybody, welcome to a Build Your Stash video. It's no secret that I have been dabbling in the vintage feel art journal pages and canvases. And here are some of the things that I've created. Well, one of the things that I ran into as a problem was that my sentiments that I print off on copy paper, like this, the stark white just doesn't go well with the vintage feel and vibe. Now, I tried to colorize them with acrylic paint, and as you can see, it kind of worked, but it pushed back the print. It got a little dark. I wasn't exactly happy, and so I was looking for other ways. I came across these printables online, and I can't remember where I got them. It was a free printable that someone had put out there, and she had taken the words and put nice colored backgrounds. And I thought, oh great, I can take my sentiments from my sentiment packs, and I'll put a link to those sentiment packs because they are available if you're looking to purchase sentiments for your art journal. And I could play with Word and do that. Well, I'm okay at Word, but I couldn't seem to get a background color that I liked. So I went searching for another solution, and I came across it. What I did was I had a cup of tea. I tea stained papers. Now, I admit, when I first heard of tea staining papers and people were putting them in the oven and to drying them and stuff, and 3-4 years ago when I started art journaling, and there's no way that I'm going to do that. Well, I'm in a different place, and I'm revisiting some of those things that I never wanted to do, and tea staining the papers is one of them. So I was watching a junk journal YouTuber, and she was tea staining, and basically she said four tea bags, cup of water, let it steep, and then use the paper. So I'm just going to walk you through the process. I'm not going to get too involved here at all, but I will tell you some information about it as we go. Now, the first thing I wanted to know was, will the paper hold up to it? So I had regular copy paper, and my copy paper is from Costco, and it's 24 pound, and it's 90 GMT squared. GMT, okay? But I also had some cover stock, which is 67 pound and 140 GM. So I just thought, okay, let's give this a try. So what I did is I just put a plastic tablecloth on my table, and I just painted the sheets. And this literally is what I did. I was not too picky or too careful. I just experimented with it to see, you know, how much fuss, how much muss, how much hassle is this? Because for me to do it and build my stash, it's got to be pretty easy. I don't want a lot of it. So it soaked through, and then I just left it. So I did the cover stock because I wanted to know if, you know, if the paper warped a little too much. Because I had a couple plans for it, and I didn't want it to get too warped, but I did want to get it tea stained. So I just put a layer on, I let it dry. I did not use my heat tool. I came back, I added a second layer or a third layer as I went till I got the color that I liked. Now, I didn't attempt, I know you can do the same with coffee. I wasn't attempting that. And, you know, I think this is a perfect project to do. If you're building your stash, do it all at once. You know, make your cup of tea, do a whole bunch of papers, different kind of papers. Now, I also did coffee filters, which I love collaging with. I have some tissue paper. Napkin, I found the inside of the napkin, while it will stain, it also disintegrated. It was very hard to work with. I also did some gauze. So any material that can soak it up worked really well. And then I also did some rice paper that I've purchased and I've been experimenting with to see. The other paper that I played with was some music sheets. Now, I bought at, you know, the thrift store. This is truly vintage paper. It has been colored and aged the natural way. But if you're not lucky enough to find a stash of this, you find music notes. You can see the difference in color. You can take these music papers and tea stain them. And then I would come back if I want it more and just put on another layer. And then the second and third layer, I may not put it everywhere because you want that variation. And then I would be using this music paper or some of these pages as collage papers, as blank spaces. I can stamp on them with some things. I can do some stenciling on the blank ones. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, now, one of the things that you can do as well that I experimented with, and I'm going to see if I can find this one. I'm not sure. Can you see those creases? The markings, and I love that look. So I'm just going to share with you how I did that. So I just, after there was a couple coats of color, I just wet this down with another layer of tea and just got out my plastic wrap. And put that on and crinkled it up, and I let it dry. Now, because it's got the plastic wrap on it, it does take a little bit longer to dry, but I really liked that effect. And for this piece, you know, this may be something that I'm going to rip or I'm going to use as the base of my page. And I think those markings are really, really interesting. So we have, and you can see the different markings. Here I just splattered paint on them. Now, here's the difference. The coffee paper warped a lot more. Now, if you take it on the side of your desk and you kind of smoosh it around, but my cover stock, the 67-pound, 148 GM, stood up to it pretty good. So my next step was, I'm going to see if I can put these through the printer I thought, are they warped enough? Are they straight enough that my printer isn't going to have a hard time with it? You see this? I took the mesh, this gauze, and I lay it on there. And so now you have that imprint. So you can put different things on there. You can play with it however and get some interesting markings. This is the rice paper. So there's the rice paper color the way it comes, and now I have the rice paper this way. And I want to use this to collage with. And rice paper, I'm experimenting how well this is going to work. So I have a page of regular copy paper, it's this, and I have a page of the cover stock. Now, what I'm doing is I am just putting this right into my printer paper tray. And I do it one sheet at a time. I don't layer them in there. I'm not sure if that's necessary, if that would be problematic. And then I have my sentiment, my digital sentiments on my computer. And you can see I just have a bunch of my just sayings, short sayings, much like Tim Holtz, right? But these are mostly nice. And I want these to be for ATCs. I have a project going with ATCs, making ATCs from masterboards, and I want nice, small, short phrases. So I'm going to put the printer paper in first and print off a page. So I'm just going. Now my printer, I put what it will print on the top stuff. You'll have to figure out for your printer what works. So I'm going to print just the first page here, one page at a time. And you can see it's just a bunch of words. And you can hear the printer. Fingers crossed that we're not going to jam. And voila. So now I have all these words that I can cut in the rectangles that they're in, or cut closer if I want to use for ATCs, for my small quote journal, art journaling, what have you. And they're nicely tea-stained vintage vibe. Now the last time I printed on just the copy paper, you can see it creased, it crumpled. This time it did not. So you run the risk of that happening. This page was a little too warped. This one I ran on the side of my desk and I kind of went like this to straighten it up a little bit more. So you can flatten them as much as you want. So now I'm going to do one of the cover stock. It's a thicker paper. Putting it face up. And I'm going to file print. This time I'm going to print page 2. again, it works perfectly. I find with the cover stock, it gets a little bit of the toner on there, so a little, but it's vintage, and so I'm good with that. So these sentiments now can all go into my stash. Now, the one other thing that I want to try and put on, I want to use the rice paper. Now, the rice paper is larger than the copy letter size. So I'm just going to cut this down, and I will save these little bits. I can actually just stamp using my letter stamps on here if I want, or I can just use these for collage. Now this has kind of a smoother surface and a rougher surface. I'm going to put rough side up. And I'm going to try to print that. And we can see that worked extremely well too. And this is going to collage down a little more translucent than regular copy paper. So I'm going to play with that and see if it makes a big enough difference, because that's the other thing. I want the sentiment to blend more into the background. Now, I'm sure someone's thinking, well, you can go out and buy parchment colored paper. And absolutely you can. And if you want to do that, go for it. I just like the idea of having one stash of paper that I can use in a multitude of ways instead of having different colors and different things. So one other thing that you can do is take the papers once you have that base coat, and you can prepare them. We're talking about stash builders here. So I'm just going to grab seriously? Just going to grab some of my stencils, and I've got my makeup sponge. And I'm just going to get these a little bit more Now, as with every stash builder, I would be doing this, assembly line. So I have all my tea stain papers, and now I have all of this. So I bring out my stencils, I get the paint, and I do it once, and then it goes into my stash. So I'm using the ethereal stencil here, and look at that. Isn't that lovely? You can use your script stamp. You can use but the idea here is I want it all to be that little bit of vintage. And once you have the stencils out, and you have the paint out, it's half the battle. You're only cleaning up once. So we have lots of things to add to our stash. We have the sentiments, our word sentiments, or whatever kind of digital sentiment you want to print off onto the tea stained papers once you have them. We've done some stenciling with stencils that have that vintage feel. And now those can be used as collage pieces in and amongst some vintage printables as well. We've tea stained music paper that wasn't naturally vintage. If we're not lucky enough to find one of those, we can still get that vintage feel. We've got coffee filters, we've got mesh, we've got tissue paper. We have some blanks here of paper. We've got rice paper ones, we've got papers of different weights that will all be in our stash. So I would, go and use up the entire cup. Just keep doing the papers, so you do it one day. I think come summertime, if you're doing this outside, it'll dry really quickly and you can add more and more layers and get different colored papers. I think this is a great thing to add to your stash. Give me a thumbs up. And we'll see you for the next Stash Builder. I'm going to put a link to my stash organizing system. It's a recent video, but I am putting my sentiments into here. The ones that are cut out are going into a plastic pouch. You can repurpose packaging from things that you buy at the dollar store, from stencils. So this will go into my stash, as well as all my other vintage tea-stained vintage papers. And I've got a little smaller envelope in here that I can add. I can put the little bits on, that I can keep them. I've got some blank sheets here that I can print out more sentiments if I need a specific sentiments. If I'm doing a bigger art journal page, I can print that out. I've got some tea-stained rice paper in here as well. So this and this will all go into my fat filing system. Thanks for joining me. Give me a thumbs up. Share with your creative friends. If you give this a try, leave me a comment. Bye.